Show him something will last. Show him something will last. Time it litters the ground. Leaves suck dry with the age. Purest white moves to beige. Time tends to stiff on the wage. I smell it all up in smoke. Stuck in the curve of the road. Speed to join the hearts that have slowed. Time never pays.
Joe, hot or not?
That's it. That's all we have.
Hots or nots? Just
The
Hots or
balls
nots?
episode. Hots or nots?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's hot and what's not?
Yeah, what's
Well,
up?
it's an oldie. We're bringing it back.
What's
for
hot?
today.
I just
Ovens when they're on.
That's like a George Carlin.
What's hot? I mean, what's not? So what's not hot or just what's not?
Yeah, well, we've coined it what's hot and what's not.
And so what's not?
Yeah.
or
Your
a
shoelaces.
Jake rant. You can just do whatever.
Ooh, a Jake rant.
Rant.
This would be interesting.
I had a rant
And
with the last.
I'd have to get started off with I'd have to get.
So the rant I was going to go with
Wait, yeah. What's your
is
rant?
people who are shitty drivers in the winter.
God,
Like
shitty
this
dri-
happened to me the other day.
Well, we just had a huge. Well, it was a snowstorm here in Wisco.
if you don't live in Wisconsin, you can have
That
all
swept
4
across the whole
seasons.
nation.
You can have 4 seasons in 1 week. That's how we do it. here.
I do have a
The last like 2
fucking
weeks,
rant. Yeah.
2 months.
I'm
have
ready.
been,
So I'm
like,
driving
all
down.
4 seasons.
It's snowy, right?
snowy,
I got
white stuff coming out of the sky.
Yeah, snow. That's what it is, right? Anyways,
Except for it was much worse than that.
I'm driving down the road, right? And all of a sudden, I see the lady in front of me just slowing down to a stop. No, nothing's going on. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and so it's kind of slippery. I'm like, I don't want to slam into her. So I start.
Well, of course.
She proceeds then to just take a left, like with it's coming to a complete stop, and then took a left onto a road. Like no blinker. I had no idea what was going on. Whatever. And then I'm driving a little farther forward, and a guy. If it's snowing out, you shouldn't be pulling out into traffic unless it's totally clear.
Right.
Because you might start skidding, and the guy in front of you can't, or the people coming from the other direction can't stop. And he just pulls out. I had to slow down and get over, so I didn't slam into him.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah, I was like, I don't understand. People just the snow, and they either super cautious or uncautious.
Right.
There's a happy medium here, folks. I don't understand. I was so mad. And I've got kids in the car, man. Come on.
I
Mess
get
with
it.
me.
I smell what you're stepping in there.
Okay, you got a rant, though?
Well, I do. This was on the radio actually the other day. It was right after the big snowstorm. What was the name of it again? I don't remember. They always named
Nora or
Wait, they named them?
Efron.
They named
I don't
storms.
know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't listen to the news enough. Efron.
Well, okay, so that is one thing that I've enjoyed in my lifetime is always, I mean, it's something that affects all of us. It's the weather. So, like, I watch the Weather Channel. Miranda hates it. Maybe she doesn't hate it anymore, but she's always like, oh, the Weather Channel.
Yeah, I'm on her
And then she has
side
to,
on that
and
one.
then she has to change the channel. But I watch the Weather Channel, you know.
If I had a saxophone, it'd be like the smooth jazz that plays on Weather Channel.
Yeah,
Right.
while it plays your local.
Right.
So think of that while you're hearing this
Okay.
shitty organ.
So the other day on the radio, this is a Milwaukee radio station. Well, of course, no, I can't. 620 WTMJ. They were talking about in New York City, the forecasters, the National Weather Service was like, you're going to get like 1.5 feet. Okay. You're going to get 1.5 feet. You're going to die.
18 inches.
You're not going to live through this. Okay.
Hunker down, kiss your loved ones.
The forecast changed. They didn't change their forecast. They kept it at 1.5 feet. They only got about 6 inches, which is still a measurable amount of snow. I'm not taking away from 6 inches. It's still a good amount of snow.
Sure.
Especially for us nowadays because people don't know how to drive and all that good stuff. But it came out then that the Weather Service knew this and decided not to change their forecast. I see both sides of the argument where people are like, well, you should tell us the truth. And then there are people, too, that are like, no, it was the right call because people don't take this stuff seriously and all that stuff. So, you can have more people on the streets. And businesses will stay closed and things like that. But for 6 inches of snow, I feel like you can have some businesses open. You can do some things. And not only that, my biggest thing with this is that forecasters already do not get a good rep because the weather changes on a whim.
Yes.
Right? But, too, I mean, I think we've gotten pretty good in the recent past of,
I
dialing
always say
in.
it's going to be so bad out there.
Right.
And then you're just like, no, it was fine.
But the thing is that now nobody's going to fucking believe them.
Yeah.
Oh, they're saying we're getting a foot. It's going to be 2 inches. And I'm not saying that in terms of like the people who already don't believe him. I'm saying like the fact this came out, they cried wolf, and now people aren't going to listen to him. Yeah. And that puts people in even more danger. And they did this to keep people out of danger. I understand that.
But that's what happens when you lie and the truth comes out.
Exactly. I mean,
I love this conversation. It's so great because you're talking about a very like minuscule, microscopic thing, but it actually is illuminating on every level. That if you were to zoom out from it, especially right now.
Fake
news.
For me, it just like it highlighted. I'm like, you're even gonna fuck with the weather now?
Well,
like,
that's what
really.
You kind of expect the weather service to be like the one truthful thing. Like, okay,
Well,
whatever
that's
happens,
the way I feel about it.
like the weather is going to be right, or at least their best.
Because
estimates.
I'll tell you,
Well, wait.
we've
what?
got a lot of dim-witted people in America who already just make their own decision anyways. But now the fact that they're just like, man, the weather. I don't want to give it an accent because that's just dumb. But
like,
It's dumb.
I don't know. It's
there's going to be 10 tornadoes. There's not going to be any tornadoes.
but what's
We're going to play outside all
We're
day.
going to tell you there's 10 tornadoes.
like what's the harm in being too cautious?
Because people don't believe it.
But now,
Weren't they going to not believe it either way? Like
Not necessarily.
If you have the predisposition to be like, oh, you did it you didn't tell us the truth the one time. Well, and that's I don't even listen to him anymore because
Well, but that's how people are nowadays.
But I don't know.
But that's the only.
But is
thing
that on
you
the
lose.
weather reporter's conscience? That I don't know.
No,
like,
not the specific person. It's on
the
whoever
organization.
Made that,
or whatever.
whoever made that decision.
Wasn't
I mean,
it like a
how
national
soon?
thing?
Like, how was it? Like a day out? They already
a day
knew
out.
that it wasn't.
It was
gonna
at
be,
least a day out. Yeah. And the fact, I mean, sure, fine, you do this, but then don't fucking let it
But
out.
so how do we know that? Like, so if it's a day out, it's a day out. So you don't know what you're gonna get until you got it. It's
Well, exactly.
weather,
I
you
get
know?
that. I
Because
understand.
wasn't there the whole like potential of it to bomb out and like?
Allegedly not, because they
but
said.
but the point is that like if it was able to change,
weather's
I'm with
always
Joe on
able to
both sides
change.
of it. Yeah.
And I do see both
I
sides.
just rather know the truth. Like, okay, but
Right.
but as an educated Wisconsin individual, I know what snow is. I know.
Not only that, but the biggest thing to me, goes back to a Louis C.K. deal. Just let out the truth and let life happen. Let it work itself out. If someone wants to be an idiot and be like, 6 inches, I got that, and they really don't, that's their own fault.
but so then let's look at it from the weather reporting, like that organization's motive. Like, were they not telling the truth just because? Like
They
it's not
wanted
like
to
they had
protect
an
people.
ulterior like.
No, they
we're gonna
wanted...
get all these businesses to close. And
No,
like,
no, they
No,
wanted
no,
it
no.
just
So
So
people
then
take
from
it
that,
serious.
and again, like, yeah, we can get all worked up and be like, there are people that will no longer believe it, and this is how truth gets diminished. But like at the end of the day, if people are being presented with fact and they're like, well, I don't believe the credibility of the messenger anymore. Like, but you yourself are like, yeah, but that makes no sense. Like, I'm looking at the facts that they give me. I see that they check out, so I believe them now. Even if last week they gave me a piss poor.
But there's
account
no
of
way
it.
to tell how
See-
truthful weather is because it's always a guess.
And this is, like you
Right,
said, this is a
right.
very minuscule thing, but it goes all the way back to everything else.
Yeah.
I don't care what the truth is. I just want the truth, even if it will harm me. I want the truth. That's me and my core, my Joe Horstmeier as a human being. I don't care. I want the truth. I want to be able to make my decisions based off of the truth, not some fabrication that you think will save me or make it better. I know, there are millions of books and movies on that subject in general, but for me, it's almost like a slap in the face to me, where it's like I would give someone the benefit of the doubt and give them the truth, because they've earned that, they deserve that, and I would expect someone to do the same for me.
Right.
So
I agree.
that's where I'm coming from with that. And again, they were coming from a good spot. I don't think it's like other agencies where they're like, we have alternative.
Manipulative, yeah.
Right.
But there are many people out there who will take the idea that I just said and use it directly as attack against them. So now we're going to boycott this, and now we're going to screw them, and now,
Right.
Which is a terrible place that we're in right now, but that is the reality of where we are. So that's why, for me, I'm like, don't tarnish what little credibility you had.
Right.
Because now we're stuck here, And maybe people don't care at all. Maybe they don't. And maybe I'm the only one.
It might be different, too, in New York versus Wisconsin, where there are a lot of idiots over there versus Wisconsin people. Are just
Well,
better
that's
with
part
it.
of it, too, is that, like, every year it'll snow there, and, like, everybody just forgets how to be human beings. Like, everything just shuts down when there's, like, an inch on the ground.
Sure.
That's just the way that it works, because you just forget. And they have the luxury of being New Yorkers, so then they can be like, whoa, we didn't remember what it was going to be. And then they get all pissed about it and whatever.
Do we have
but
music for that?
I think that there's we didn't know what it was gonna be. I don't know if because like the weather thing is obviously it's so hitting and missing.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you're predicting the future
Oh,
based on
definitely,
the wind and but
Stars and the wind.
yeah. But then when we get into, because you say like just present me with the truth, but the truth is dependent upon who's looking at the given event.
Yeah.
It's
that's
all
true too.
like it's what Obi-Wan said. Like I did tell you the truth from a certain perspective.
Yeah.
By the way, a little housekeeping from back in the Mandela Effect episode
Okay.
of Paranormal Palaver.
Wow.
There was a criticism
Episode 7, ladies
from
and gentlemen.
nearly the entire table that it was strange writing on the part of whoever wrote Empire Strikes Back to say, no, I am your father. You
Okay.
guys were like, he just says, he told me enough. That doesn't make sense that then he'd say, no, I'm your father. He says, he told me enough. He told me you killed him, which is why he says, no, I am your father.
Okay.
So you guys had dropped the, he told me you killed him.
Uh-huh.
So the
missed the
sequence of
line.
So we're
lines-
changing it again.
You changed it. So in that little universe that day, and that got sent out on YouTube and such, it's now on iTunes. Is it?
Yeah,
It
no,
is.
yeah.
But
we
that,
are-
just so you know,
Sorry, everyone.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I meant
everyone.
to like call it in and leave.
Yeah,
my own
you
voice
should
now.
have commented
I
on.
just
I'm
now
very
remembered it.
upset.
Yeah.
You should have
I'm very
commented on
upset with
YouTube
this
like
situation.
we asked vehemently.
How did we get onto that then? But that's what I'm saying is that like
The
it's
truth.
it is that's
But
what's
I don't
that's
claim
what's
to be a
hardest
reputable
about it.
news
that's-
source.
Yeah, some people don't. Some people.
If anybody's listening to this or have listened to Paranormal Palaver, I mean, don't weigh your next decision on what we say because we are.
But I think that's part of our
professionals.
problem today.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I'm not saying I'm some authority that, like, has the things to solve it, but we have people that have very large podiums,
Sure.
big old megaphones,
Yep.
that seem to forget the fact that when you say words, words have effect. And words have
Yeah.
gravity. And the more gravitational pull that you as a person hold on other people, say you're a celebrity or something. I had a reality TV show and people believe what you say.
Right.
Then when you say it, it's not like, well, I misspoke or I miscommunicated or I was given the wrong message. Like,
Which are
we're-
we as human beings even allowed that right anymore?
Love what right?
To misspeak, to make a mistake?
We seem to be. There's plenty of people that cut some people slack, and I think it's
Yeah,
all
that's a
going to
good
It all
depend
depends
on
on how sincere I think you are in your apology.
Well, I mean that.
and whether or not you apologize. And
Yeah.
Sure,
like
sure.
I mean that in the
like-
grand scheme of everything. I mean, because there are pockets that will be like, "Oh no, you're fine, totally," and there's other pockets where are just like, "No, I don't care what you say, what you do, you're not vindicated at all." For
No,
a
I think
mistake,
it
not
does-
like a well thought out plan. Because that's
well, I think
dumb.
there's a difference though too that the claim of mistake has been hijacked in a way.
Sure.
Like because you know that like, well, you can't get into my brain and tell me that I was purposefully manipulating what you were going to think.
sure.
Like you can't, even if I made a mistake. Okay, I'm sorry. I got some facts. I was watching some cable news and I was told this and it made me angry. So I decided to say something about it. And it's not my fault that the source I was watching
Yeah.
was wrong. I was just taking it from what I believe is a credible source. So I don't see why everyone's attacking me now. I'm liked by a lot of people. a lot of people like me. So I think you should maybe look at that. Like, look at that as a source, okay? Get what I'm saying?
No, I get it. Yeah. We're too absolute nowadays.
I think it depends on who you are, though, too, and what you're speaking on.
Yeah.
If you are a news outlet or a well-respected person, you have that requirement,
Yes,
that
yes.
obligation then to be serious and to fact-check yourself.
And there are...
And if, Joe and I and you were sitting here BSing on a podcast and we get something wrong, we don't owe that to anybody, I don't think.
And I hope I wasn't, like, I didn't mean that as a jump down your throat. It was just because I suddenly remembered there was this one thing I wanted to bring up. But that's not me being like, you guys were wrong. You need to redact that episode.
But that's the point, is that we say we are going to be wrong on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And we want people to write in. And it is more of a
makes for more
conversational.
Yep.
Thank you. When we do argue and to get the listeners' feedback and all that stuff. But
right.
there are just as many, to your point, people with loud microphones who should have a moral responsibility to be accurate in what they say.
And I don't want to say unfortunate, because that's, again, implying it's a intrinsic perspective. Like,
Sure.
I can't get away from that. But it seems unfortunate that organizations, individuals, what have you, like, I can think you're not operating from a moral center. Like, you clearly have vested interest, or somebody has vested interest and is pulling your strings to say what you're saying.
Right.
But that's from my perspective.
Sure.
So from their perspective, they could be cutting and slashing and gutting whatever sort of mechanisms that we thought was working as a good machine. But from their point of view, like, that's the moral thing to do.
Sure.
So I can't even fault that. But then that's where it's the gray area, where you're like, yeah, but somebody can then hijack that and use it as a manipulating machine to say, like, no, like, this is my morality. So then I think that's where we get in trouble. And we don't know. Like,
There's too many absolutes.
Well, it's also, what do you mean by too many absolutes? What do you mean?
Again, kind of like you said, this is like my own perception of life, but I feel like there's just way too much gray area for someone to...
It's all gray area.
Right. For someone to be like, no, this is my moral compass. I mean, sure, it is, but that doesn't mean then that the person next to you is wrong either.
Exactly.
You know?
But see, now we get into the whole idea of radical religions.
Sure.
And so you have these jihad bombers who really believe that if they go do something crazy, they're going to get these 40 virgins. And so then it becomes, oh, well, it's okay because that's what they believe in. And that's where I kind of...
Well,
I
they also
get a
happened
little
with the Crusades.
Yeah,
so-
exactly. And Catholic did a lot of bad things just the same way. And that's where it kind of gets that gray area where I have a hard time saying, well, it's okay because that's what you believe in.
Oh, yeah,
when there are
totally.
people being hurt. And I'm not saying that's what you were saying, Jake.
But yeah, that it does cut both ways.
Yes.
In the fact that, like, we want to be able to say, well, yeah, just believe what you want, worship how you want, just don't hurt anybody. But then by their worship, like, they have to actually infringe upon someone else to do their worship, because that's
what it calls.
But then
on.
again,
And
like,
that's what
I
I don't
really
like.
don't think that and this is where, I don't know, like, I have a problem with the word God, because I think religions have taken it and they stretch it to go over whatever Tupperware bowl they want you to sit in, or whatever. But
Right.
like, I feel like whatever benevolence, whatever omnipotence that we are a part of and are gathering information for,
Sure.
Worshipping.
I really don't think that that benevolence is engendered in certain parts of, say, the Bible or the Quran that have been hijacked as fundamentalist. So,
Right.
like, I don't remember the name of the actual book, but I think it's maybe Deuteronomy. But there's this, it's the whole thing of, like, your enemy over the hill, like, go and kill him.
Yeah,
and you get to take their wives and their children, become your concubines, all this. And it's all in the Bible. It's right there. And it says, but that was written by men who had an actual threat across the hill. And so they were using the mechanism that they had as a tool to be like, you all here, you got to do what we say, because we're holding the rule book. And the rule book says if you don't do it,
Yeah.
you're going to be smited. And we have these people.
And
so,
I
like,
wrote the rule book.
Exactly. But, like, you can have the fallback of being like, I didn't write it. I got it
Yeah.
I'm the big guy.
Yeah, that guy told me to
upstairs.
write it, yeah.
And he's
Right.
a guy, so that
Divine
means I
intervention.
am your guy. So, like, and that's all wrapped into it too. But like, I don't think that benevolence is engendered in those portions. I think that's human fallibility and human fear that's getting in or desire for your neighbor's wife or objects. That
Right.
But that's where it's all the gray area that like you can sit in your mind all day and be philosophical and at peace to say like anyone can do what they want. But then when you get people onto an airplane, hijacking it and using it as a bomb, then you're like, well, okay, but your thing of worship is actually killing thousands of people. So now, like, how do we continue this diplomatically?
Yeah,
which is why it's always
no
like,
line.
well, the easy thing to do is just get more guns and shoot your enemy because then I don't have to deal with it.
Shoot them before they
Shoot them before they shoot you. And I'm not making this about a gun rights thing at all.
Right.
I'm more so saying, like, militarily, like, well, let's just bolster our...
Aggressive.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like sort of the whole... well, why are we going to pull the weed out at the root when we can just keep trimming it at the top and then it looks like it's one, pristine lawn?
Keep cutting it, and then it grows
Exactly.
back and
Whereas
keep
if,
cutting it.
like, and I'm not talking about, well, go in there and eradicate ISIS or whatever. Like, it's an impossible thing to do now. Like, it's not possible.
It's an
Theory,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
an
because they're a
idea, thank you.
stateless, a stateless nation. Like
Well,
they don't
mercenaries.
have. Yes,
I mean, they're
exactly.
not-
So, and it's all so unhinged that there's no, like, yeah, you can try to put a narrative to it, but any narrative you put to it, then they get to take that and be like, see, this is what they're saying about us now,
Right.
or whatever.
It's all locker room material for both.
It's
both
all
sides.
yeah, it just becomes spin for whatever side you're on, but I think that's our challenge. Like that's our challenge is like how do we, as like kindergarten as it maybe sounds, but like how do we get along in this sandbox? Because that's really
Right.
all it is. The whole pale blue dot thing again. That like think of the oceans of blood that have been spilled because of these like skirmishes over an invisible borderline.
Well, and that's
For
why
an
I've always
invisible
said
person.
An
Yeah.
invisible person.
That's why I've always said, nobody up top is going to fix any of this. It's going to be us on the ground level who are doing it,
Right.
Just by opening the door for someone, easy stuff like that. I mean, we can go back and forth on this all day, or even just theorize about it. But until the people stop being divided on, because that's of course what the powers that be want us to be. Whether it's religion or politics or, I don't even know what color car you drive. We're not going to get anywhere or do anything. We're just going to continue to trudge along the path that we're on.
And I think it's important too that evolution moves slowly.
Yeah.
It moves very slowly. And I'm not talking just about biological or ecological evolution. I'm talking about psychic and emotional evolution, like globally, that take like the human rights and civil rights movements that have been happening since the 60s and even prior to that. But we see, some could maybe see that in the last 6 months, we've maybe been taking steps away from the progress that has been made. And people on another side of the fence may be thinking that we took way too many steps past the steps that we should have taken, and we need to be taking those steps back.
Sure.
But equality doesn't happen because somebody said, well, we should be equal. Okay, so then the next day you got, the newspaper was on your front
Right.
step and it said, the courts all said everybody's equal now. Like, people have to die. And, like, revolution is a bloody thing. Mm-hmm. Not in, like, yeah, I don't know. It's...
Well, Anonymous says that we're at the cusp of what could possibly be a peaceful revolution.
yeah, I don't know.
I think the problem. I think what's different about today's generation and where we're living now is that it's a completely globalized world now.
Yeah.
And
You can't put the cat back in the bag.
yeah, and
anymore.
before
You
it was
can't.
like we live in America and America's hunky dory and we have our problems, but we're dealing with them. And everybody up top, they can deal with all these other countries. But now it's like, oh no, we have to deal with Russia now, and we have to deal with all the problems that are happening in the Middle East. And now there are problems. And those problems are coming to us. We didn't invite them. We're not having wars over on their territory anymore. They're bringing it here. And I think that's the problem, that we're having a hard time as a culture accepting the idea that we're one large global community and that it's not us versus them. It's us working with them to figure this whole thing out.
Right.
Yes, and there are bad seeds out there, just like there are bad seeds here in America.
totally.
It doesn't, and that's what everybody's like, well, everybody who looks like that is bad, and I don't want them in my country, and because every time they come over here, there's bad. It's like, no, you have to understand the whole wide world of they're leaving there because there's bad stuff over there. We send all the money over there and all of our resources over to them to help them, but when they try to get out of there, then we don't want them suddenly.
Right.
We'll send you a couple. It's kind of one of those like religious things of like
pro-life, but then you're just pro-birth.
Yeah, we don't want
you
you
don't want your welfare money to go to those starving children because you believe that it's just going to be used for buying drugs. Which is a total myth.
But yeah, you won't let them get rid of the baby either.
Exactly.
And then you keep it.
And that's all then
like,
to just
somebody
say,
will adopt that baby.
Well,
Nobody's adopting
or
crackhead,
like
mentally
it was your choice
babies.
to have sex and to have that child, so you deal with your own consequences.
Or hey, you want to have sex, but yet we're not going to give you birth control anymore or condoms.
Oh yes.
They're making their own problems worse.
Exactly.
Like I don't understand, and that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I completely agree.
I don't know if it's a whole different thing. I think it's all connected.
Well, versus
it's a
what we
system.
just
It is a
talked about,
system. So first off, to kind of go off your point on, we're not over there anymore, but they're bringing their stuff here. I think a lot of what our generation is doing is we're coming to terms and consciousness of these things that we've been doing in other countries for years.
Yep.
Like we had been over there for years, and we'd been giving these people that are now shooting at us. We gave them the guns that they're shooting.
100%. Yep.
So
we thought we were giving the right people the right guns.
Exactly.
And it turns out we weren't.
Not at all.
We were for a little bit, and
Yeah.
then it was like we created another monster.
But then I think that's it too. Is like, how can we really? I watched somebody had posted online. This was back when the first executive order was put out on the Muslim ban, to say that it was the 7 majority Muslim countries. And it was a Marine who was stationed over in perhaps Iraq. He was just sitting there in front of his computer and he was like, so this all came down and, I asked an Iraqi, like one of the people that are like serving with him, like they're buddies and, they're all there in the tent. And he said something like, well, what do you think would happen to me? This is the American talking. If I walked out past the guard wires right now. And he's like, oh, the Iraqi is like, well, you'd be killed. He made the point. He was like, well, so then why would we let them come into our country where they're not going to get that sort of treatment from like our people? There's not hostility on the streets toward you as an Iraqi that goes to America, but there is for an American that walks out of the barbed wire in Iraq. But so if a foreign power came into America and decided to occupy it, whether or not we were having gang wars and such, don't you think any time that you saw them, and if you had the necessary gunmanship, you would try to mow them down? Yeah. Like, what did we do during the revolution? So, like, to use that sort of argument, and I don't take anything away from our armed services, like, I fully respect what they do, but we got to look at the context again. And obviously, like, that man, like, had the most context, more than me. Like, he's there. He's overseas, but we are overseas. We're in their country.
Now, to be clear, though, just to have the other side of the conversation, let's just say, if somebody came into America and started occupying it, we would think that as a threat that they were trying to impede on our stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong then. Aren't we over there to help, to do good, and then to get out? We're not there to permanently take over.
That's questionable.
So you see that's what I'm asking, your opinion on that. Whether you think, I'm under the impression we're there to kind of get the bad guys out, create some new good guys in there. Hopefully, we've screwed up in the past. Get some good guys out and leave and be like, okay, your show. We're here just to help.
Sure.
Get because they keep talking infrastructure.
Sure.
That's what they want to do. We're arming the good guys and showing them how to do it and then leaving. Now, that's a different perspective than for me to say, we're going to go over there, and we're going to stay here, and we're going to keep sucking your oil out, and we're going to live here forever. And granted, it feels that way because we've been over there damn near 30 years probably, since the first Bush.
So first off, it's like,
I'm not educated enough to kind of answer that question.
We have problems in the fact that the majority of, tours that these soldiers do are, 9 to 12 months maybe?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Around there. And from, certain armed servicemen that I've heard interviews from and whatnot, your first 3 months are getting up to speed on whatever you're doing, like what your projects are, whatever your tour is going to consist of. and those last 3 months are getting ready for deployment.
Okay.
So if you've got a 9-month time span, that's 6 months there that you're already not really putting toward reconstruction, for lack of a better word. So you've got that component of it. The next component would be that the team that was in there before you maybe did create a momentum, but then an entire new team is coming in, and like no one was really passing a baton that said, okay, we got this school built, so now we're trying to like continue that infrastructure building. So there's like lost communication there.
And continuity too.
Exactly. So then compounding those problems are that you do have, translators and you have fixers there that are willing to work with the Americans, but then you have other people that are claiming that they're fixers, but they're really just following the money. Like America is a udder of money, like that they realize like, well, I can say I'm going to have such and such a contact for them and I'll get money out of that, or like what have you. But also like the majority don't speak Arabic. The majority don't speak Pashto. Like they need
those people.
Yeah, they need them.
A lot of trust
but also
in them.
like, so then you can say to the Iraqi like this, and this. Do you understand? And they're like, yeah, I understand. And then they walk back to their group and they're like, oh, fuck them. No, like we got the intel that we needed from them. So like, there's a guerrilla warfare on that level. But then you kill civilians with just buckshot. Like you're not certain of what you're going to hit. And we've killed civilians. There's always going to be like civilian
soldiers
casualties.
Have killed soldiers.
Of course.
Friendly fire and all that.
So then if a foreign power comes here, like, yeah, we'd like to believe the narrative that like they're going to eradicate the bad people. And then like they're just set up this sort of equilibrium and now we get to live in this utopia.
Yeah.
But what's the reality that we're seeing? Well, my brother just got killed because of a drone strike.
Yeah.
There I am. I'm radicalized. And I had never like gone in for fundamentalism. But like as deplorable as that life choice would be, could you really fault somebody for that?
No.
Yeah. So I think there are just like so many variables that, and I like the final part of it is there isn't actually an end goal to this war. Like the global war on terror, what could we ever say? Like, when could we know that it's eradicated?
Yeah, because
we
there's
can't.
always small
and
pockets.
It's written that way. Like it's written so that it can continue on, because who benefits the most from this? All of the contractors that built McDonald's on those forward operating bases. The contractors that get to set up these little Americas. We think we're trying to spread democracy, but we're just spreading corporatization.
Sure.
That's what we're doing. So it's this like new age imperialism where we get to say, well, we're the world police, but really we just use that badge to kick in a door in the name of world peace.
Yeah.
But we have the same ulterior motives that we always have, which are built on capitalism. Like that's what our govening structure actually is.
Well, yeah, that's
like a capitalistic republic, if you could say that. More of an oligarchy, I guess. But that's my rant, I suppose.
Joe?
I don't know. Kind of where you were ending there. That's kind of where I'm at. I have a very, very hard time with any type of information that I get nowadays, just in general, and even from, I'll say, little on. The way I've always viewed us is like Star Wars, the Imperial Army coming in and messing with other people's stuff. I always felt like, and without, bringing up the W word, I've always felt like here in America, and I'm not saying to keep people out, but I'm saying to protect us better. We stick indoors. We build up our infrastructure. Again, I don't want to say wall because I want people to come in. I want everyone to come into America. That's what makes America great. But it's more so just, keep our side of the street clean type of thing. And if they're going to come over and hijack our planes, which is also in question, we don't know who actually did that.
We don't?
No. George W. Bush might have had something to do with that. But
Joe's a 9/11
I'm very much
conspiracist.
against, I don't know, I just feel like we have enough issues and things to work on here that we have no business over there. We have the technology now to to grow other types of energy sources.
Sure.
So why don't we put our money into that? Why don't we,
great
you know,
question.
it's things like that where I just think that we're wasting and wasting lives at other places when we have people on our streets that also need help. We have social issues here that don't need stoking. They need, you know, kind of calming out. And we don't do any of that here.
Right.
We just continue to...
We double down on what's already...
Right. I just read something the
bigger,
other day, too.
faster.
It was great. It said
oil.
the news... Today read a huge win for Republicans, a huge win for Democrats, and all I wanted to read is there's a huge win for Americans. You know, not splitting us up anymore. We need to get back to the basics, and that's why I always keep saying, you know, it's going to be us on the ground level working together to build a strong base again,
Right.
and then growing from that. But yeah, it's a very interesting time, and it's. We usually don't talk about this kind of stuff.
It's so interesting.
Well, it is.
Like-
When we're 80, 90 years old,
Like
if we
get
make
to
it that
say
long,
that we lived through
right, we're going to look
2016,
back and be like,
2017.
well, and not only that, but it might be a decade worth of
it's going to
weirdness.
be, yeah.
Just the other day, I watched, it was the early 2000s, you know, so from like 2000
Is it
2000
like
to
the
2010,
CNN stuff, like the
where it like
Tom
recaps.
Hanks documentary series where like they've got the 90s, the 80s,
Yeah,
the 70s.
dude, it was
So
crazy
good.
because like I was feeling this, just the way they portrayed it. It was actually very neutral. It was just here's what happened, you know, and then here's the way society reacted to that. And so for me, I was like, oh my god, I lived all that. It wasn't even like the 90s anymore, where I was a kid and
It's
playing
like
around.
rose-colored.
Yeah, it was actually like, holy shit, I totally
that was
remember
messed up.
how fucked up that was.
I
You know,
love
but
doing
yeah.
it now where like all I do is listen to podcasts at work, but a lot of them true crime. And so I'll hear about these things that happened like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but I have a context of what I was doing, where I was, and
Yeah.
as like small and microscopic as that feels, there's still this like resonance.
I was a
then
part of
happens.
that.
That's like, yeah, like
Yeah.
I wasn't really aware of the OJ stuff while it was happening, but I was alive and
Yep.
I was 4 years old. We were living in Minnesota. Like dad has a story that mom sort of contests that they were watching it at a certain point, and mom's like, "Oh, we weren't." What
Well,
are
I
you
remember
talking about?"
distinctly
But,
us
like,
sitting in front of that small
the small-
12-inch
sure,
TV,
sure.
and there's this Bronco just flying down
I think
the
mom
highway.
said that she was at Finger Hut while it was happening.
Yeah, it was
and-
just us
but-
boys at home.
But whatever it was, but like that point though, that like something that happened in 2005, like I had no clue that all the Stephen Avery stuff was going on then.
right?
Like
yeah.
other than the stuff we saw
it just in the news.
in the news,
Yeah.
but like, you know, like you were graduating high school, then Nick was a senior. Like we played football like 20 miles from where the courthouse was. You
Sure.
know, like when we played whoever it was that we played. I don't remember the
Brilliant?
No. I
Well,
don't
either
remember.
ways.
But yeah, you get what I'm saying. So yeah, but I keep, you know, like the majority of my friends from college, you know, like they're all artists. You know, we went to theater school together, so it's pretty obvious where we land on the whole spectrum
Sure.
of sort of social identities.
Yeah,
But, it's like that's sort of what I always end my spiel on, is like these things kind of scare me, these things make me nervous, but gosh, the whole thing is really interesting to be watching.
right.
Like, it's, and I know it's bad to say like to be observing, because I know that my default position is a wallflower, so I'm just gonna like kind of
sit back.
sit back in the background and be like, "Ooh, wow!" Because also, like, we're just like this wheel just keeps turning. It's
Yeah.
been turning for 13,000 years, however long we've been here
Yeah.
as the human species, and this has always happened. It always happens.
And it will happen again.
Exactly. So, like, and I guess that's the thing too, is like this march toward a more equalized society. And you could argue like, well, that if we were all equal, you know, it's the whole argument of like, well, if you're always happy, then you're never going to be happy because
Right,
you have
right.
no relativity with it. But there are things now that no matter what you want to admit that you are under a label, there are things that you can't really say because you know someone might have a problem with it. And
Yeah.
whether or not you get pissed off because they have a problem with it, like that whole argument is something that I would love to turn on its head anyways, that like, so you want a safe space to say this stuff that somebody else says isn't making a safe space for them. So therefore, you want a safe space. Like you want, you're asking for political correctness too.
Well,
by
of course.
saying like, let me be an asshole and demean you, but it's just words. It was just a joke.
Yeah.
There are tons of people that actually believe it
Yeah.
to be true. I was going for a point there, but let's get caught up.
You can make whatever point you want.
No, it's a good point. I
That's
mean,
what we're doing here.
and that's kind of what I was getting at before. It's hard to stay away from this kind of topic because it's so we have. I feel like we do a good job
It's
on here.
incendiary.
It is. You
eats
can't
you up.
stay away from it. But we here on this podcast, I hope, are not pigeonholing ourselves because, of course, in the great eyes of capitalism, we want everyone to enjoy.
Free market of ideas.
Yes, we want everyone to enjoy this podcast. But at the end of the day, we do have our own ideas and our own feelings. So it's something that will come out from time to time. And I don't know. It happened today, that's for sure. So
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has their own thoughts and ideas on it, and it is such a thing where almost everybody is slightly different. You know, nobody will
that's
have
the
the
point.
exact two things,
Yeah.
which is the good and bad of the whole thing. Is that no matter what, even if the three of us agree on 4 major points, we may argue on the 5th one, and then all the 4 other points suddenly become degraded because we can't agree on the 5th one. Therefore,
do
the other
they, though?
4.
Well,
Well,
in
that's what
this
happens.
society,
That's what I'm
yes.
saying happens.
In this day and age, yes. Because the fact that you don't follow me 100%, you're not my friend anymore.
Yeah.
But that's then like we're internalizing that as individuals. Whereas
But
like
that's what it
but
is
we can
nowadays.
fight that urge. That like trust me, I've had the same experience. Like I read some people's statuses or, you know, we all have the echo chamber thing too, but
Yeah.
there's some people where it's like, I didn't know you thought that way.
Sure.
But then, like, you do have to fight your knee down and say, like, no, you're not going to jerk this time because I'm using my, like, prefrontal cortex. I'm going to say, I'm going to take a breath, and I'm going to listen and hear you out.
Well, that's just the
But
point.
that's the point. Yeah.
Unless you punch my mom in the face, I don't have a problem with you. You know, like that's the whole idea. Sure, great. You have a different idea than I do. That's the point. That's how we're going to progress as a human species is by conflict and by not getting along 100%. Because we're not going to change anything if we all have the same damn idea.
But then I
know?
think one of where we get bunged up is, like, and it started in World War II, where Hitler didn't punch our moms, but he was doing things enough that we needed to go in and like do something about it. And I'm sure that there were a ton of other things that the Rockefellers and the Roosevelts that like there was all this other stuff going on.
Sure.
And we only get part of that story. So then we got to deal with that and make our own narratives that end up in textbooks and blah, blah, blah. So that's just sort of like we get a world and then they get a world. So we just got to deal with the world we have.
Right.
But there comes a point where, like, have you guys heard of this Richard Spencer guy?
It's not ringing a bell.
He's the one that, like, he wants a white neo-European state. Like, that's what he wants to create. He wants us to go
He's
back
based
to our
where?
European... I want to say he
Europe
was...
or
No, he's
America?
American.
Okay,
He's
that's
American.
what
But I won't say, like, alt-right. Like,
Wait,
as
he's
far
a younger
alt-right...
guy.
Yes.
I
yes.
know who you're talking about now.
So he got punched in the
Yep, he
face
did
in
get
Washington,
punched in the
D.C.
face,
He
yeah.
got kicked out of the conservative, the CPAC,
Okay.
you know,
I do
conference that was going
remember-
on.
I know who you're
like
talking about
even the right side is like, hey, you're like a little too much for us. We don't want to outwardly say,
but he
that
doesn't
we
come
believe
off
these things.
And for the listener, he's not like he doesn't come off as like with a pointy hat.
No,
and he's,
no,
he
and
looks like a
that's-
respectable
yeah,
like
yeah. He looks like a
politician
young
guy.
like a millennial.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like.
But he's got really.
But when
radical
you hear
views.
what he says, you're like, whoa. So he didn't punch our mom, but like if he was allowed to get free reign to say, this is the world I want to create, it would negate, like literally negate the existence of a whole swath of population.
Sure.
So then that's where a gray area comes up of like, well, what do we do? So everybody gets the free market of ideas, but that idea is kind of terrible. Like,
And I think we can all agree on that.
but we
mean-
all can't. We all can't.
Okay, a majority of people. I think that the reason he isn't doing that, sure, he has the idea, and there's probably a group of people
He's
traipsing
trying like
behind him.
hell to do
Of
it.
course he is, but guess what the history books have taught us, and however fake or real they are, terrible, terrible things have happened when that happens. So that's why, sure, he might have $1 million behind him right now, but that might be all he gets.
Sure.
There are people like you and I and Jeff who will at least stand up against him.
But are we standing up?
I mean, we're talking against him right now.
I can personally say that, like, again, wallflower here. Like, I have done next to nothing about any of the opinions that I have. I've just said them to my wife.
Sure.
Because again, like,
Well, what
I
do you
have
do?
the unfortunate
That's the
thing
other
of,
thing
like,
too.
Is it like signing an online petition?
But
Or
there's
is
a
it-
there's a
or
time
is
to
it-
act, though. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not an act
True,
all
yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
I
guy.
get that. I get that.
You know, there's a point where you do something,
Yeah.
and at this point, I don't feel that point.
That's the
made
other
sense.
thing too. I always see like anonymous posts this stuff like this is happening, and the American people are sitting on their couch. Well, the problem is there's probably a lot of people who want to do something. No one knows what the fuck to do because we're that dumb. We in school we never were taught.
And
how
what
to
are
go
we going to
through-
do when there are huge problems?
There are
overseas?
things you can do. Not overseas. I'm saying like here, right in America, like
people
bills
do
that
do
are
things,
signing,
like-
and things like that. I don't know. I
There
mean,
were, millions of people that didn't like what happened, so they went to Washington, D.C.
and what
the
changed?
day after. Plenty of people talked about it.
Well, those-
You got the guy to actually, like...
When it got repealed, the judges repealed the whole. If we're talking the
Oh, I
immigration
mean,
thing,
they did
Oh.
both. Like,
Yeah.
the next one has been stayed as well. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
Hawaii and I think...
Well,
the
I'm
other
saying, like,
politicians
I was
are-
talking
we
about
can-
the inauguration. I was talking about
Oh.
like the women's march, like
See,
that. But the point is it was an image. Like it was an optic. You couldn't deny that it happened. So already there were people ready to stand up because. And I also don't know if we can say that like, well, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. Like, can we say that? Can we agree that there were things said during the campaign? I still just like can't, and I know that I'm putting myself at risk by saying these things out loud on a
Well, be
podcast,
brave, man.
but
this is you not being a wallflower.
I don't understand. This is the thing that got me the most was that there are people that raised me. Like, I'm not talking just about family. I'm talking about community members, that if I would have said the things that this person said and these people would have found out about it, I'd have gotten reamed. I'd have gotten, my backside, whatever. But like, it would have been plenty of repercussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my character, rightly so, would be somewhat under question, like, especially if I was, say, 55 years old when I said it.
Mm-hmm.
But then these same people that, like, I trusted as authority figures to say, this is right and this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have these black and white. And I, at the time, wasn't aware of all the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that there are things that were set up there that are pillars of black and white. One is right and one is wrong. Gray area considered, there is still right and there is wrong. But these people still said, all that given, I'm still going to go with the one who did the wrong thing.
And that's my point. No one knows that we have other options than this wrong thing or this wrong
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, I have one hand up and the other hand up.
the pineapple.
Yeah. That's the point, is that all we have are just two options. All we have
And
are
we
just...
don't, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's too great. It's too out there for us to just say, I really don't like what he or she said, but I'm going to have to go with them because they're not as bad as the other one. Along the moral lines that I live with.
Of course.
Well, I'm sorry, but you have other options, person.
do.
As an American citizen, that's just it too. We have certain rights that are still there. They haven't totally all been taken away yet, but no one knows what they are because we're not taught that.
Well, no, I think that if you...
All we're taught in
if
America...
you want to know your rights, there are
Oh, yeah, you can
documents
go
to
out.
read.
You can all go out and do that, but who's going to do that?
But I guess, and this is getting kind of off the topic of this full line of
There is no
talking,
line of
but like,
Yeah, we're just...
because this is
It's not linear.
This is a difficulty I've had in my own maturation since turning 22 and leaving college. Is that there were plenty of things that I was always like, but I was never taught that. But like everybody else around me was just like, yeah, neither was I.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I have a car now. And that's why, because you know what? I just did the human thing and I internalized the fact that I wasn't told about it and I went and learned myself. But then because I am still kind of caught in that thing of like, yeah, but we never had home ec. So I didn't learn how to balance my checkbook
Right.
until it was too late. And I didn't have it ingrained as a pattern. So now I just don't do it
Sure.
or whatever the example is that, like, I just feel so behind in the world that then I'm just like, well, I just got to go to work. I just got to make sure that I'm paying rent because I don't
Right.
have any.
And yes, to your point, yeah, we
I
can
just
all go out and
feel
look
like
for it.
My personal agency, like, I'm so jealous of people because I feel like I have, like, mine has like dried up. I just feel like something happened that suddenly it was like
Yeah, but I
the
don't.
power that I thought I could just like create things,
Which is an American.
create momentum. Of course,
Which
it's
is an
the American dream,
Right.
And because I know that I'm like that's been
How old are you?
27 now.
Okay.
So like I've been like I think that's what most of my like when I write
I think
that's what I'm.
I think
like,
that's the right time though that you realize. I remember I wrote poetry for a while, and I remember writing one about how when you grow up, they tell you can be anything, and you get to a certain point in your life, and you realize you can't be anything. And I think that's really tough for people to admit because you are. I don't want to say brainwashed, but you are to a certain point told. I remember it's another thing too is when you find out the sports heroes that you adored, you're now their age or they're younger than you, and you're like, that dream is gone. Like, I will never be this anymore. And you hold on to that for so long, and that's why I asked how old you were, because I remember I had it at 26.
Sure.
I had a real breakdown at like 26, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to pull my shit together because all these things I thought I could do and dream and whatever, no, that's gone now. You were 26. You need to figure it out. You've got the next 40, 50, 60 years of your life, and you need to start figuring that out now because all these other dreams are gone. I mean, I distinctly remember having that thought. And it is
like a traumatic
It
thing.
is. I remember, I think, I don't know if too many people talk about, but you have your 40-year-old, what do they call it, the midlife crisis, right? At 40, whatever. I think a lot of people have that in mid-20s, maybe a little later.
The quarter life crisis.
When you get it, when you're just like, it's over. And
I think
sorry, I
that's
bogarted the-
no, not at all. Like that is verbatim, like the conversations I would have in my head when I was living in New York. It was like, I no longer am on a schedule where 9 months out of the year I'm at school and I'm given a rubric that tells me where we're going in 9 months. And then I've got 3 months to like explore and come back.
have fun.
Exactly. So you do
It's not
that
fun anymore.
for what? 16, 18 years of your life.
I just read too there. You know how people say adulting is hard. It's the term
Yeah,
that
that's
people
the
use.
thing.
There is now a class, and I forget which college it's being offered, but they
it's
call it Adulting 101.
I've heard
and they
about this.
teach you home ec, and they teach you balancing a checkbook. They teach you all these cool things. And I was like, I kind of had that in high school. We did have kind of a class like that. It was kind of wrapped up in our English class, but they taught us manners, and they taught us how to talk to people and introduce yourself and write resumes and all these weird things that, I think it's weird at the time. I was like, I don't need to learn this. I'm 15. Like, what do I need? And I do think it's crazy how kids nowadays do come out. And I'm not saying any three of us, but younger kids who have had a lot of stuff done for them and they come out and they have no idea. Yeah. And it's so overwhelming, to your point, and I've done it too, where you just shut down. You're just like, I'm not. Yeah. You mean I got to do all this extra stuff? I can barely do these 4 things.
And it's not only like, and I'm sure that they're like, I feel like the adult things, like I can manage those. Like I learned how to balance a checkbook, and like I do so much stuff online. Like I barely write checks, so I just don't really do that anymore.
Correct.
Which mom thinks that's the strangest thing in the world. Like,
Well,
but again, like there's a generational
one
gap.
credit
there.
card, one payment.
Like
I'm done.
Yeah, like I don't even have a credit card because it's why am I going to deal with that?
Yeah.
Whatever. But like those things aren't really the problem. Like I guess my big hang up is the death of the dream. Like and I have like had that conversation with myself in so many different ways. I think that's a lot of what my work is about, and that those dreams, they're all ultimately tied to that one great American dream, which says like you pull your own self up from your own bootstraps, and I guess this is just for myself that like I know I've lost faith in myself, so then that becomes like this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, well, if you don't have the power, then you can't get your dream done. And then it just like kind of snowballs off of that. And
Have you had this, Joe? Because you're what, 27, 28?
30.
Oh, 30. Okay, even better. Have you had this yet? Because
I remember.
You do, okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would hope
the
everyone
band
goes
thing.
through that.
Because I
Yeah.
knowing you a little bit, I would guess that the dream was the band.
Yeah.
And
I think I maybe had a little bit more of a unique situation as a human being in general, where I remember distinctly I was in middle school and I wanted to be an actor. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. I remember watching, and this is weird, but I remember watching a documentary with Brendan Fraser, and he was talking about how he got to where he was when it was in the 90s. So, of
He was
course,
pretty popular.
he was a big deal back then. And he talked about how hard it was to get to his point. You know, he was talking about a specific situation and how he had tried numerous times, and it just failed completely, but then obviously went down a different path. And it hit me. I remember crying in the living room. I was the only one at home, and I was bawling because I was like, you're not going to do this. You're not going to make it.
Really?
And I was in middle school.
That's pretty.
So it wasn't like I gave up on a dream because I still had fun doing it. I had a blast, and I was like, well, there's still an opportunity. You know, I could still do this. But I remember that happening. And then from there on, right as I was getting done with high school, I got into a lot of drugs and alcohol, and I had to completely change my life around literally by the age of 20. So I found out that the world is a rough place if I make it that way. Exactly. I'm the one who drives how my life is going to be run. And that's how I've changed all of my ideas to not so much the dreams of, I want to be in a band or I want to do this. It's more so, oh, you want to do that? Well, then go do it. And it's not like I have this end state. Like even this podcast, I'm just having a blast doing it. Right. You know, who knows where it's going to go? All I know is I have, and I talk to Miranda about it all the time. It's that next step that you take. When I was quitting using, I literally was so bad that I couldn't. They always say 1 day at a time. I couldn't do that. I had to do 1 second at a time because I knew that I can control the next second in front of me. When it was 1 day at a time, it was too big. And that's why, too, when you come out of high school or college or wherever, the world is literally landed on your lap. And then you're like, holy shit, this is too big. Yep. I have too much freedom now.
Lack of parameters.
Yeah. So then, I had to break it down so minute just so I could handle 1 more second. And then from there on, it grew and grew and grew. But that's where I am nowadays. I don't concentrate too much on the dream. I mean, sure, I could have a different job, I guess. I could have, I could want. That's the other thing I like at work. They're always like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I just want to be happy, and it's not like I want to have $1 million or anything like that. Sure, that would help. That would help a lot of things.
Would help the happiness.
Right. But that's not what's going to... I'll tell you, what's giving me the happiness is doing my next responsibility as best as I possibly can. And that's keeping me happy just fine. So I totally get where you're coming from. I get where everybody's coming from. And it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like... I just found a different way to approach it. And that's kind of how I've been living since then.
All life is.
Right.
Like, really, when you get down to it, is how do you continue to deal with your changing position in the world and your trajectory, which a lot of that is just solely based on your outlook on it. Because there's so much that you can't control anyways.
Right.
That we believe in this illusion of control, that I'm on the road and I have my hands on the steering wheel, so I control myself, but somebody can come in and jackknife you. Or there's black ice under your tires and then Mother Nature gets you. So either way, you knew where you were going, but whether or not you get there that's the journey, as they say. So, was just visiting with my professor up in Stevens Point, stayed the weekend with him and his wife, and we were discussing sort of this exact thing. And he's, in his 40s, and he's talking about how, he's just, getting the hang of feeling okay with, he went to New York, and he was the associate artistic director for a off-Broadway theater company and directed off-Broadway shows that were very successful. But then he came back to the school he went to college at and teaches acting there. So they're his partners back in New York look at him and they're like, you're crazy. You are an idiot. Why would you give this up? And it's this is what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I'm happy for the most part.
Yeah.
Kate and I were just talking 2 nights ago, and just we're kind of hypothesizing what if we didn't get back together in New York? We'd probably both still be in New York, and we'd probably both be really unhappy.
Sure.
We may be further along in our careers commercially.
We
maybe the band would have gone somewhere, and Kate would be doing commercials for I don't know what CoverGirl or something. It's amazing to be I would not be this happy. I know I wouldn't be because I would be fraught with other worries that stemmed from that. So as much as I feel, a lot of it is just because my identity was pinned to what I did.
Yep.
My identity was pinned to the fact I was an actor, a musician, and and then you go out once the world is put in your lap after college or high school, whatever, but you get out there and you just realize, like, this is way too heavy. Like, I can't parse it anymore.
Yeah.
The way I was able to when it was a smaller world, but that's a vacuum. That's not the world.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get frustrated because, well, I'm not holding up my end of the bargain anymore. Well, it's a much heavier end of the bargain to hold up now, So, like, cut yourself some slack. So for, like, Kate and I feel like a big part of that is sort of what you're saying of I couldn't take it day by day. I needed to take it second by second. So we need to slow it down enough that it's like, well, just pay the rent and go to work.
Yeah.
And, oh, you're still writing. Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Because in 5 years, there will have amassed a chunk of writing that I wasn't really thinking about as like this, well, I got to write because I got to publish it into a book. But I go back and I read it and I'm like, oh, my, there's actually something to mine out of here now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that and I'm going to push it into something else. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I know for myself, that was what I had to do, is take the goal and, like, actually throw it at the end of my life and just say, well, you just kind of got to keep going. And, like, because unfortunately, when I set a goal, like, I feel like I'm setting myself up for disappointment. Like, that's kind of what got in it, like, because I purposefully did that. Like, that was the way I achieved success at the in spite of myself. Like, it was like, yeah, you did it this time. I hope you don't screw it up the next time, though. That, like, I'd get a note after a performance.
Right.
And I'd be like, yeah, you're right. I didn't do that right. That it was a success if I didn't get notes. That's not the way you should do it. Like, you should want notes. You should you should, if you don't know the note, then sing it wrong, but loudly. That whole,
Then someone will give you a hand.
Exactly. Somebody will say, and that's it too, is like you become prideful in the fact that, like, well, I built this myself. And the amount of people that say that, and it's like, you have no real grasp of, like, the amount of people that either sacrificed something so that you could have the privilege that you have now. But you think that you worked your hands to the bone for that. I'm sure you did some work, but you got a lot of ancestors that got you here.
Right.
Found it in fertile fields. The Father's work would yield a beautiful bounty to behold. Swaying wagon foes of gold. A dozen eyes looked up to him, and though his hair less thick than thin, they watched his stature conquer all, till that fateful earthbound fall, like the thawing ice. His neck broke thrice, and soon screaming down the drive came those quickened colored lights, and the news soon flew that his neck, it would not move, and we realized the fatal price to live life once removed. The sun would rise again and beat back the darkening den. Soon the silos overflowed, a smart harvest to bestow.